As we've heard this morning, UK supermarket chain Sainsbury has succumbed to pressure from the Financial Services Authority and issued a fairly downbeat trading statement. The regulator had become concerned about selective disclosure of information after Merrill Lynch slashed its profit forecast for Sainsbury's twice in 5 days following a meeting with the company. So just how effective are financial regulators? Joining us now for today's talking point is Dr Paul Toyne, Managing Director at Article 13, a specialist company that advises on corporate governance, amongst other things. Thanks very much indeed, Paul, for joining us this morning. We'll get into the sort of the wherewithals of Sainsbury with Steve in a few moments' time. First of all, in direct answer to the question we've got, how effective can regulators be? How hard is their job?
Well, I think there is, first of all, it's important to state that there is regulation in place to manage the relationship between the analyst and the investor relations of a company. But of course, regulations are open to interpretation, and there's always going to be some grey areas. And it's these grey areas which really need to be addressed. And what I mean by that is that there's a need for good governance by the companies themselves to be absolutely clear in what kinds of information or what type of information should be disclosed in informal conversations that happen between analysts and investor relations.
Now, of course, there's been an awful lot of focus on corporate governance since the scandals of the last few years. Sarbanes-Oxley sort of has tried to address some of that as well. How easy is it still for companies not to? I mean, there will always be some people who break the rules knowingly, but how easy is it to sort of slip into this grey area, perhaps unknowingly?
Well, I think it probably is quite easy to do that, and one of the safeguards that we would recommend is, again, going back to the board, and the board should be explicit and very clear on what types of information should be disclosed and shared when these types of conversations happen. Because after all, those relationships between the investor relations and an analyst are to be encouraged. But what we need to see is when there is, I guess, price-sensitive information being disclosed, it needs to be disclosed to everybody, not to select individuals.
Yeah, because it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, analysts, brokers get paid, for their inside knowledge of the company, and that's their job, is to speak to management, get a sense of what is happening. So trying to work out that line, is difficult, isn't it?
It is very difficult, and there you see the area which you move into is the ethical dilemmas, and how can a company help its employees with their ethical dilemmas? What type of information or conversation should we be having? How do we develop the trust and accountability within that relationship? Because I think that those are two really key words actually to concentrate on, trust and accountability. Because after all, if you are a flagship company, you'll be wanting to be seen as being able to provide openness and transparency and disclose information at the right times and operate in a way that actually promotes trust and accountability, because that's good for your business.
What in your opinion is the answer here? How do you say, because you've got to keep the market informed of where the company's going, because if you don't, your share price gets killed when you suddenly drop a bombshell on the market, so that's not the way. So there has to be a series of briefings. So how does a company manage this? Well,
I think the investor relations side of the company needs to be fully briefed by the board as to what level of information should be disclosed. They need to ensure they have the right types of safeguards to ensure that they are not actually breaking or not complying with the regulations that already exist. And I think that if there is going to be a situation where a investor relation actually, on reflection, thinks, I actually gave away too much information and that's unfair, there needs to be the credibility between that relationship, that the investor relations can say, look, sorry guys, everybody needs to know about this. I've made a mistake. Please respect my own personal integrity. Do not use this information.
Weighing up the interest is a tough job, isn't it?
It is, yes. But there's some valid points that have been made, and particularly with Guy, with regards to the role of the analysts and are they doing their jobs correctly. And it may be that they are actually putting just a little bit too much pressure on the investor relations side of the companies by asking the leading questions to say, look, give us a bit of a steer here. So that's an area for further debate, I guess.
Although that's their job.
Yes, but if you're forcing, a company official to provide more or disclose more information than they really should be, then that's really creates an unfair advantage.
Well, let's bring up the regulator side here, Paul, because Roland's saying there are people in Germany criticising the German regulator of being incapable. The FSA, as Steve was saying, does get a bad rap sometimes, although he's saying the things they're doing very well. And at the same time, of course, we work in a global market, an integrated market. Should we have an EU, one regulator across all these markets?
I guess that's the big question, isn't it? And I'm going to sit on the fence here, actually, because I think if there is more examples of poor corporate governance which provide an unlevel playing field in which businesses operate in Europe and further afield, then I think there will be a need to actually review and look at some of these wider corporate governance issues and maybe even provide a better guidance and a framework at the EU level. But until that pressure is there, then I think we'll probably, adopt a cautious approach at the moment.
I just want to make a final point that I think is that while the trend is still developing slowly, it is at least moving in the right direction. 3 or 4 years ago, these conversations did not simply happen. The press was well known for having its Sunday drop. Analysts were well known for having too many conversations with companies. While there is an awful long way to go to create a level playing field, as Paul's pointing out, I would argue that actually, compared with 2 or 3 years ago, things have developed considerably, and we really shouldn't lose sight of that.
Go along with that?
I would do, yes. No, I think what we're seeing now again, even through this debate, is literally a turning over of a new chapter in the issue on the whole subject of corporate governance, and that's to be commended.
Paul, thanks for that. Dr Paul Toyne joining us from Article 30, and our thanks as well to Guy, Steve and Roland as well in Frankfurt.